Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Now, one of the things that I find frustrating about bodies for RC crawlers is that there's such a wide variety of sizes, you're never really sure what they're going to fit like until you actually get them. So what I'm going to do here is take this new body that I've just got, the JConcepts Gozer body, take a few measurements, share them with you, and test fit it on a couple of chassis to see how it works out. Okay, so let's start off by taking this one out of the packaging. Okay, so here's the body, and let's start off by taking a look at the accessories you get supplied with it in this little plastic bag here. So there are the masks pre-cut for the Gozer body, and there are the stickers that JConcepts supply, a few Gozer related decals, some rear lights, no front lights on this, which you'll see in a moment, a few JConcepts stickers, a few American flags. So this body, as I understand it, is based on a monster truck that's run in the States in the past called the Dozer, but it's not licensed, so it doesn't have that name. But we'll just take a quick look at the body in full before it's been trimmed. So just looking around the wheel arches here, you can see you're going to need to trim right up to the trim lines. It's not flat. Not a huge amount of detail in this one from JConcepts. You can see that the shape of the windscreens has been changed, but there's no particular detail on the grille here. This, I believe, is based on a Ford Super Duty truck. In real life, the trucks would have headlamps out here, but the monster truck has had the whole front end narrowed down, so you don't see any headlamps on this. Crew cab style, double cab style, not that there's very many details in it. And then looking at the rear of the body, we've got a fairly plain bed here, which isn't great for scale detail, but to be fair, probably makes it a lot easier to mount because there's less awkward lumps and contours to get your body posts in. And then it does narrow down to a very heavily tucked front and tucked rear on the bed with the details there where the lights go. So next job with this shell is to get the knives and the scissors out and to trim it down. So now that we've got the body trimmed, let's take a few measurements. First thing I'll mention is that there is the possibility of leaving a little bit more material around the edge of the wheel arches because the curved moulding doesn't go all the way up there. I've chosen just to trim it straight back to the cut lines because I'm going to be running larger tyres anyway. So got the tape measure in hand. Let's start off with total length. And that is about 440 millimeters in length. Now let's take a look at the width in the middle across the doors, just under 200 mils width. Next one is overall height of the body shell, and that comes in at about 120 millimeters. And a couple of ones that I find quite useful to know is the difference in height between the bottom of the body and where you mount it. So in this case, between the rear flatbed and the base of the body is about 70 millimeters, and between the front bonnet and the base of the body is about 75. Another interesting dimension on this body is how narrow it goes at the rear, and the width at the rear is just about 70 millimeters. The width at the front is about 120. So just to compare the body overall with the Proline Cliffhanger, which is another competition focused body from one of the major manufacturers. This one is ever so slightly longer by about 20 mils, ever so slightly wider by about 10 mils. Funnily enough, despite appearances, the height is very, very similar, only a few millimeters in it, even though the Gozer looks a lot chunkier. Now for a test fit, this is an Element Enduro Builders Kit 2, currently running Class 1 4.19 inch tyres. Let's see how it fits. Okay, so as you can probably see, lengthwise, it's a tiny bit longer than the chassis overall. Height-wise, it still has the same issue that a lot of pickup bodies have with the Builder's Kit 2, where these rear shock towers are a bit higher than the original Element Builder's Kit and the other mainstream Element kits. So if you were to use this body, you'd probably need to trim some holes in the flatbed to get it to go over those shock towers properly. not a problem at the front end, and the clearance around the front bumper is good. You could run this quite a lot lower, and there's still a bit of room there to get it down onto the sliders. Width-wise, you can see that it's got plenty of clearance for all the electronics inside a standard element build with the electronics on the sliders, without being excessively wide. It is a little bit wider than the gap in between the tyres, but that's to be expected. And at the rear, the narrowed rear end of the Gozer shell just about fits over the rear of the element chassis, although it is quite snug if you were to mount the body all the way forward. And this time test fitted on a competition crawling chassis. This is the Artful Dodgers Ground Fox version 2. As you can see, even with the standard height of the body, it just about goes down to the level of the sliders, and it's resting on the shock towers at the front and the rear, so there won't need to be any extra cutting for this one. It's just a little bit too narrow for the chassis at the rear, so it does sit a little bit back, and the front end lines up quite nicely with the front of the tyres. I'm going to build this to a set of rules called UK2, which is run by a group called JCRC in the UK, who set up quite a lot of crawling competitions. And I don't need to be particularly strict on the body. There's quite a lot of leeway in the way you set up the body. So I have the potential to trim parts of the body away. As long as it covers all the electronics from the top, broadly speaking, you're okay. There's no minimum height limit, for example. So I will probably do a few additional trims on this body shell just to get it as close as possible to the chassis while staying within the rules. From the front, you can see that the Gozer body on this LCG chassis, the front grille does dip quite a long way below the chassis rails, so there's a good chance that I'll trim quite a lot of material off here, because one of the rules for the UK2 rule set is that I have to run a proper front bumper, which I haven't got fitted at the moment, so I'll have to make sure I can line up the front bumper and the front of this Gozer body shell. And from the rear, just like with the element chassis, you can see that it's not quite wide enough to fully go over the rear of the chassis rails. Again, this is something that I might trim in the future, just to reduce the rear overhang. We'll see how we go when it's out on the trails. So that's a quick overview of the JConcepts Gozer body shell for RC crawlers. I hope you found it useful. If you've got any questions or comments, then as ever, please do leave them below this video. If you like what I'm doing, I'd appreciate a like or a subscribe, because it helps me keep the channel going. The next time you see this body shell, it will be painted up and it will be on the rocks with the Artful Dodgers chassis as well. Thank you very much for watching.